Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs, coming at you live from my underground laboratory where I create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And what do I do with those things once I create them? Well, I usually put them into comic book form. I love to create comics, so it's only fitting that I would team up with the awesome folks over at Design Cuts to bring you our brand new product, the amazing comic book World Builder. So what does this thing do? Well, what doesn't it do? The amazing comic book World Builder is my most ambitious digital product to date. It's going to allow you to create comic books and comic book inspired projects like never before. This thing is packed full of so many different elements, so many different resources, so many different tools. It is going to make making your comic book projects so much quicker, so much better, but you don't have to take my word for it. I am going to give you a little taste of what the amazing comic book World Builder can do. All right, so here it is, the amazing comic book World Builder. There's so much you can do with this product, but first what we're gonna do is I think the best thing to do is start off by making a cover. And by doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with one of the many master pages. There are master pages for interiors, and there's master pages for covers, and there's master pages for manga, for magazine, and for American comics. So we are going to start with the American comics master page for cover. So we're going to open that up, and right away you can see there are some instructions here that you can use to help guide you through some of the process. One thing you will find on the master pages are a number of masthead templates based on some of the more popular layouts throughout comic book history. We're picking out one that kind of resembles old Marvel comics, one of my favorites. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and pick a perspective grid. And there are a number of perspective grids you can choose from. We're going to drop those in, and also just to let you know that all these files are available in both Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the two, so I'm opening up my grids in Illustrator, posting them into Photoshop, just getting them to the right size. And what you could see that I did, I also reduced the opacity. Now I'm going to start building my scenes. So you can see there are a number of building facades. I am pasting one of those building facades into my master page above the perspective grid, and I'm going to use that perspective grid as a guide to sort of create that perspective for this building. So no matter which grid you use, you can kind of skew these different building facades, and there's interior settings, there's outer space, there's all kinds of different backgrounds that you can use. We're going to create sort of a building, sort of a city setting. So I've got one building kind of laid out in perspective. Now I'm going to put another building in back, and we're going to sort of repeat that process with another building in the background. So this is going to be a little more of a skyscraper, because I want there to, I want to have depth and I want to have scale to this. So I want to show some buildings out in the back. Now, as you can kind of see, we're only focusing right now on the right side of this template. The other side would be the back cover, and whether there's an illustration on there, that's up to you. So anything that goes off of that, you're not really going to see. So we're not going to really concentrate on that side. But we are going to make sure we match up these buildings to the perspective grid. Now, of course, we've got one in the background. So what do? We don't want it to be see-through. So we're going to go, and once we get this lined up and everything where we want it, so it's in the proper perspective, then we can go out and we can delete anything that we don't want off of that. In order to do that, when we're pasting these in, they're all vector. I'm pasting these vector, buildings into Photoshop. Now, before you can start deleting things, you have to convert those to raster, which is, sort of the native to Photoshop. And that, of course, depends on whether you're working in Photoshop or Illustrator. Now, we're going to start creating our scene, going further into creating our scene. We've sort of got some backgrounds, and as you can see, they're not fully done yet, but we're going to go in and fix those up in a bit. But we're going to start in some of the foreground. Now, this is sort of a trick that a lot of comic book artists use, and that is to, so we don't have to draw a lot of stuff in the foreground. We're just putting a little smoke in here, because what that is going to be is we are going to create a scene where a hero's kind of busting out through the city. There's going to be bricks flying and everything, and all this debris and smoke. So we've got sort of a cloud of smoke here that we put in. Now we got our little UPC. We're going to delete that, the clouds in front of there, so it's not obscuring that. It's looking pretty good. You can kind of see how the smoke is a little bolder. Now, that's something you have to pay attention to. Now, we can do that in Photoshop. We can go ahead, and once we scale things up, they might be a little smaller. And the general idea when you're designing a comic, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your foreground elements are just a little thicker than the background elements, because what that will do is that will create sort of not force perspective, but an atmospheric perspective. So now again, we've converted those buildings to raster, so we're just going to delete those. You could also create another layer underneath with a mask if you're worried about wanting to move that stuff later, so you don't have to delete those, because if you move it and you've deleted what's back there, it's not really going to show up anymore. So that might be another way you can do it. And with this, there are several different ways you can go about creating your scene. This is just one method. Now, as you can see, I've put another foreground element. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of thicken the line of that. You know, you can just create a little stroke around it. And what that'll do is that'll make the foreground elements pop a little more, because you want that, the foreground elements to be a little bit thicker than the background elements. You can see what I just did there, where I made that a little bit thicker. And because as things recede into the distance, they're going to be a little unclear. And so that way, any way we scale these, we can take these small objects, we can blow them up. And right now it looks pretty thin, but we're going to want to add a little, you know, a thicker line to that by adding a stroke to that. And then we'll just move that into position where we want. And we're going to continue this process, just taking all these different props. There are a number of different props. There's like powers, that if you want your hero shooting out powers, or if you want to use some of this debris or whatever. If you want, there's, you know, all kinds of smoke. There's just a number of different props that you can use to place in your scene to help create that scene. Same with the background. There's just a number of different elements that you can use to create scenes like this. Now, some of the things that we'll find out as we go, you're going to have to do some of the drawing yourself, but this isn't like necessarily, I mean, there are some of these props and things that you can use just right out the box. But like figure drawing, you want those to be original to you, so you'll find that we'll start working with some like poses and things and just using those as guides. So a lot of this will be guides. Some are, you know, items that you can actually use, and you can alter it if you want, or you can keep it the way it is. And then some of the stuff you're going to have to use that as a guide for your own drawings, because we want our stuff to look original. We don't want it just to be, you know, a generic superhero that you would paste in there, because this is sort of a drawing aid, more or less. Okay, so again, back to different props. Now what I'm going to do is, we've also got all these cool sound effects that we can use. So I'm going to take this boom sound effect, and I just created a white outline around it, so when I import it in here, I won't have to go back and erase any of the background there. And I can scale this however I want. It's okay if some of it is obscured by some of the foreground elements. You'll see once we place our hero in there, he's going to obscure even more, because most of that is just these continuous O's. So we can kind of get the gist even if some of that is covered. So it's not as important that you read it all. You know, you can still get the idea of what we're trying to say here. So we've got our sound effect in there. That's pretty cool, but you know, I think I'm going to need some more, you know, a little bit more debris in here. And I want, these are going to be a little more in the foreground, and these will be in front of our hero. The rest of the stuff that we put in before, that will be in back of our hero, but I want some bigger rocks. So I've blown them up quite a bit. I've increased the line weight of there using the stroke. And again, there's so many different ways you can go about this. I'm just showing you one process. You can do it your way, whatever is more comfortable for you, if you're familiar with using certain shortcuts or whatever it is in Photoshop or Illustrator. And you can use, if you wanted to just use Photoshop, maybe you don't have the whole Creative Cloud suite, maybe you have Photoshop, maybe you just have Illustrator. You can use either one of those, or you can use both of these files in tandem, however you like. I like to go back and forth, because for me there's some things that Illustrator does better than Photoshop, and vice versa. So yeah, so now I'm getting some of my rocks in there. I'm just gonna go through, make that a little thicker, and then delete the background there so it doesn't look like the rock is transparent. And yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. So I don't know, what do you guys think? You think we're getting close to where we want to actually have, you know, a hero? Maybe not. Maybe what we want to do is we want to go and with some of the brushes, and there are a number of comic book brushes that come with this that we can use. And we're going to go ahead and now, you know, like I said, you can use these props, these buildings, these facades out of the box just the way they are, or you can add to them and change them around. This building was a little too clean for me, so what I decided I wanted to do is go ahead and put in some broken windows, maybe chip some of the rock of the building away like it's been damaged. And this, you know, there's just a number of broken glass here that we can put in there. You can kind of see how that adds to that effect. yeah, I'm just going to keep doing that here. I'm just going to go ahead and erase some of that so it looks like the top of that building has been chipped away. And then just repeat it. You can go crazy with it, or you can be a little more subtle, or not at all. It's all up to you. And that's what I want. That's the point that I want to get across. These are just tools. These are tools that are going to help you create better drawings. But don't use them as a crutch necessarily. You know, these are going to help you become better artists. But you know, it's purposely designed to help you learn how to be a better artist and use these as tools to expedite the process, to put out work faster and everything. So now you can see what we're using some of these brushes to fill in. Like I said, you know, we don't want these buildings to look totally flat, and there might be little tweaks like around the windows and things we can go in to make them pop out a little more, to give more of a 3D effect. Because they are sort of flat drawings that we've skewed. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use another tool, and that are these logo design grids. Most, especially comic book covers, are going to have logos, and comic books are famous for having real bold, in-your-face logo design. So these are specifically designed for that. A lot of them are 3D. Some of them have arches, like if you've seen sort of like the Superman logo, or this one's a little more like maybe the Hulk logo might be, where it's big, bold, and blocky. But there's all kinds of logo design grids that you can use as guides to create your logo designs. Now for this, I'm using Illustrator. I find Illustrator is best for working with type, and I'm just using some of the free distort tools to go in and sort of make the lettering here match up to, you know, to the grid behind it. And as we go on, you'll see that I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna kind of give this 3D effect to it. All these grids is again just a guide to help us, you know, create better logo designs. So I'm going to repeat the same process using my transform tools with the comic book lettering here, just like I did the world builder. Get that where I want. Yeah, I'm starting to like it. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to copy this world builder type, bring it down, reduce it in size a little bit. Now I'm going to create it the same sort of light blue, non-photo blue, put that in the background, and just line it up on the bottom here. Now you can see where I'm going in and adding that 3D effect, just matching the lines of the upper letter to the lines on the bottom, and you can already see how that's going to create a really cool 3D comic book look to it. Now there are, even Illustrator, I think they do have some extrude features that you can use for your type. Some people might like that better. I don't know. I like sort of the line weight around this, and I just like the way it looks. So I'm going to use these tools, and you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay, so that was getting a little repetitious, so I kind of cut, and we're almost done with our logo right now. Just finishing up a few minor things, and then once we get our logo, it's done. We can save that, and we're going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to copy that, and then we're going to paste that into our master page here on one of the foremost layers. So always keep in mind where your layers are and everything. So the logo is probably going to be in the most foreground layer, although we may have our hero pop a little bit above that to give a little more depth. But yeah, so we're just going to go ahead here and place that right in here. We can kind of resize it a little bit, and yeah, I'm kind of liking that position right there. So just get that position. You can kind of see where this little circle here, where we're gonna, this is part of that masthead that the old Marvel Comics had, where they'll have like a little image of the hero in there. So I don't want that to go over the logo, so I can either put the logo in the background, or I can just go in and delete some of that little circle there. All right, it's starting to look pretty good. So what do you guys think? What do we need next? I'm thinking we need some characters. So here we go. Here's some of our poses. Like I said, there's a number of poses, both male and female. I kind of like this one here, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drop this into Photoshop. I'm going to make it a little less, or a little more transparent rather. And I've also got all these different facial expressions for male and female. I'm going to paste that in here, sort of resize. Now this particular pose is pretty much straight on, so I can actually use that as it is. Now I'm moving, you can kind of see there are some guides for the face where the eyes kind of come around, so I'm kind of moving those around because his head's tilted down a little bit. So there is some stuff you can do with these poses, or these expressions rather, if it's more of a straight on pose. Otherwise, you can just use them as guides. You know, if you need to know, oh, kind of what would a person look like if he was angry, or if he's smiling, or if he's perplexed, or whatever. There's all kinds of different you know, emotions, facial expressions that we can use as reference. So if our character's turned a little more, you know, then we'll just have to take that into consideration when we start drawing our expressions on our faces. But it's still going to help us out to kind of know, just get a sort of as a guide to know what a particular expression that we might want needs. Now I'm using some of the brushes that come with the kit. There's some penciling brushes in here to just go through in blue line on another layer. We're just going to start adding in a little more character, you know, adding in hair, and just making it just so it's just not the basic pose right out the box. We want to add our own spin to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a cape to him, and just some detail on his costumes. I added gloves, as you can see, and just make this character our own. Now, of course, the layer that I drew all in the blue line, that was just the pencil layer. That was just to get an idea what this character is going to look at. In order to make this able to print, and in order for us to see it clearly, we need to create another layer and use an ink brush with black, and then create our black and white line art. So I'm just going to sort of quickly go around, just as an example, using some of the brushes that come with the Amazing Comic Book World Builder, and create our character. And again, we get a little repetitious, so I'm going to go ahead and cut to our finished character. Okay, so we're just about to wrap up our finished character here. Now we want to get rid of that blue layer and just select the black. We're going to clip him out, and then we are going to paste him into our master page. And as you can see, I don't really mind that he's like in the foreground. He's going to obscure that font, or that logo rather, just a little bit, and that's going to give our depth, because this is the main thing we want to see. And that's the thing about comics. You want to have all these overlapping elements, and you want just things to be popping out, almost like it's 3D, even though it's not. So that's what we're going to do. Now I just reduced the opacity a little bit so I can see this brick here, and I'm just going to erase the part of our hero where that brick is, so it looks like the brick is in the foreground. I'm going to go in there with my brushes and my erasers, and I'm going to go ahead and clean that up a little bit where our hero is, because we just, like I said, we just want to create that depth. It's starting to look pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Now there's much more that you can do than what I've even just shown here. There are fonts, and there's word balloons, and like blasts and bursts, and all kinds of like sound effects, and a bunch of props that I didn't even show you. But yeah, the possibilities are really endless when it comes to the Amazing Comic Book World Builder. The idea is just, you know, open this thing up, play around with it. There's tons and tons of examples of what you can do with this in the product images on Design Cuts. There's also a folder that in the product itself that contains all these different, you know, it's inspiration. You can look at some of this stuff and get some ideas of some of the things that you can do. But yeah, this is just, I had such a blast creating this, and I'm so excited to put it out there for you guys, to have you dig into it, see all the cool stuff that you can make with it, and I'd love to see what you guys come up with some of your products. So that is just a taste of what you can do with the Amazing Comic Book World Builder. This is an exclusive product between Serkworks Art Labs and Design Cuts. You're not going to find it anywhere else. And if you want to learn more about making comics, I have a YouTube channel and a series on that channel called Making Comics 101. You can find my YouTube channel. It's Serkworks on YouTube. Check out Making Comics 101. It is basically a free course on YouTube that will take you step by step through the process of making a comic book. Everything from coming up with your idea all the way to printing, publishing it, marketing it, and everything in between. So check that out, and check out all the incredible things that you can do with the Amazing Comic Book World Builder.